A lot of economists will say that seems bad because the debt outweighs the income, and that seems like it's a big deal, but the truth is America could just print the money and make up for that, which is a race to the bottom. It will never work out. No nation has ever successfully printed themselves out of debt and printed themselves to prosperity. In fact, it has worked the opposite for nations in the past, where they had, too much of a supply of something, and basic economic supply and demand actually ended up being their downfall. You could look back in history with different cultures that used shells and different things that were plentiful as currency, and it didn't work out. Or even the tulip situation a long time ago in Europe, where they were using that at one point, not as currency, but it was, highly valuable, and the price of them went up a lot, kept going up till eventually it was so overinflated that people realized it was ridiculous because you could just keep growing through tulips, and it crashed the entire tulip market. No one has ever successfully done, like I said, printed their way to prosperity. It's not good that our debt outweighs our income. And that applies to any person in America. And if you ever wonder why we're all having this same collective problem, and obviously rich people don't have it as bad because they have a lot more income, and a lot of times when they do have debt, it's typically investment debt, so it's not the same thing as having bad debt like credit card debt. Collectively it lines up with what is happening with the individual American. The average poor American and middle class American is heavily in debt. And it is very comparable to what's going on with the nation as a whole when you look at the national debt clock. Their debt outweighs their income, and they just keep getting deeper and deeper in debt, and interest drives that debt up automatically. And if the income doesn't also go up as rapidly as the debt, then the debt will eventually outweigh the income by a significant amount. I think the annual interest on the debt that we have as a nation is $1 trillion a year. That is significant, and it's enough to really cripple us. But a lot of economists will try and make this argument and say, oh, well, America has a lot of assets that we are using as collateral for the debt, and they outweigh the national debt. And that is true. If you do look at the bottom here, you will see that we have 169 trillion in hidden wealth, and that applies to many different factors. But the truth is, that's all stuff that we would have to sell off to pay off the debt, in which case Americans would give away a portion of their nation to their debtors in order to get out of that debt.